Hello everybody and welcome to Vincent's Bike Ride. So today is wet and windy and I'm at a horrible campsite. The place I camped last night is possibly the worst place I've ever been to for camping. The room I am in now is the only shelter that I can use, and it was quite a distance from where I camped, so I didn't come here till this morning after having a nightmare to pack my bike up, but I got it done. But that's, wind and rain. But I don't like camping on beaches or sand, man. The sand was horrible. But anyway, I won't be having audio today. Instead I'm in an echo chamber recording this part. But I'll just give you a quick look outside to show you the weather. Yeah, that's it. And you can see the stacks over there, that's the toilet block. They're long drop toilets, there's no flushing toilets. Also the showers are cold showers. And this cost $15. I paid $18 at the last place and it gave me so much more. But yeah, so I just camped over that way. Hopefully I get that on the video. But yeah, so I'm going to load my bike up, finish loading it up, and then head off into this horrible conditions. Hopefully it'll go alright, and I'll video at least some of it and we'll see what happens. I may not be able to video much. I'm worried with this rain I don't want to change the batteries. I don't want to get water into them. So I maybe won't change batteries, which means only an hour or so of footage today. But we'll see what happens. Hello, and you're back with voiceover Vincent. Yes, so this is leaving the campsite, which I stayed at last night, I just talked about. It's called Hermeneutic Beach. Yeah, as I said, I highly don't recommend this place. If it was $5, maybe even at a stretch $10 would be worthwhile. You can actually see some rubbish area there, and also over to my right here. There was no other rubbish at the whole place. Like, you had to come here to put your rubbish away. Everything about this place was just wrong. $5, yeah, maybe, but not 15, just so overpriced. So I was glad to get away from this place, but the weather was horrendous. You can see these bushes flapping about. It was really windy. About 5 o'clock the night before, I decided, I was in my tent, I'd taken my bike apart, the rear wheel, and in the freewheel area, because I was having a lot of trouble with that yesterday, as you may have seen, as I get back onto the State Highway 1, the dreadful road north. Yes, so I took the rear apart. I had a look at it. It was pretty gunked up with just wear and tear. Just grease, and not grease, I'm not sure what it was, but I cleaned it all out just with some chain oil. It's all I had. I cleaned it out so it was all nice and clean again. And it seemed to be behaving better. I decided I want to take it to a bicycle shop in Wanganui at some stage and have it looked at by a professional, someone who actually knows what they're looking at. I'm not a bicycle person, I just ride them. Looking at it, to me, it looked pretty worn out. There's these little things that stick out and they look pretty worn. But we'll leave that for now because I can't do anything about that now, but I got the bike to be at least rideable, it seemed, so at least I can keep going. But the night before, after I'd finished the bike, as I said, I'd done that, and about 5 o'clock the weather started getting very overcast and a bit of drizzle. So I decided to cook my dinner then, because there was no real area to cook it, like there was no kitchen. So I did it just outside of my tent, so I was half in my tent, half out, inside the fly or the vestibule area. This kept me dry while I was cooking because it was drizzling. As you see, a lorry here throwing water on me. Man, those were horrible. There's enough room here, but man, that water gush just whoo. Anyway, so I cooked my dinner, and then that was pretty much outdoors done. I went over to that little cabin I just showed you, the only covered area where I could at least wash my dishes in cold water, but at least it's washed them. Then I went back to my tent and I pretty much had to zip it up. I left it open a little bit to get air flowing through it. And I sat in there and just, of course, as you can imagine, I'm going to say it again, I did some rendering. Hooray! And the weather just got worse and worse and worse and worse. It got to a stage my tent was shaking, and this is the first time I've been in this tent in a storm, and the tent was just shaking quite madly, and the rain was lashing down. You could hear the wind howling away. And it wasn't very comforting. I went to attempt to go to sleep at about 11. I watched a part of a Star Wars movie yet again, and then I thought I'd go to sleep, and the tent was just shaking and the wind was howling, the rain was beating down on it, and I was going, I hope my tent stays up. The first night in a tent that you've never been in a storm before is always a bit disconcerting. You don't know if it will survive, essentially. And my old tent was classed as a storm shelter. So it was pretty good in bad weather, and I wasn't too concerned about it. I've been through a few storms. This new one is certainly not a storm shelter, it's a different style. So I was a bit concerned. But it did remarkably well. It was actually about close to 1 in the morning I finally drifted off to sleep. But yeah, it was pretty horrible. I woke up at just after 7 and the wind was still howling, the rain was still thrashing down, and I lay there trying to get a bit more sleep. I wanted to wake up about 8, and I figured after about half an hour, 40 minutes, I'm not going back to sleep, because again I was just sitting there going, this is insane, this wind and rain is just insane. And I definitely wasn't going to stay another night at that camp. It was so dreadful, and I really wanted to press on and go to my friend's house. So I rolled up my tent in the rain, as I mentioned, and I've already gone over that, so I won't go over it again. And now we're on the road. So this is the first section leaving the camp. I'm heading now towards where that other campsite would have been in the town. I do wish I had gone there. The price apparently though was really high. I was told it was like $40 for a camping area. I think the guy at the counter of the one I stayed at, Urotaitai, might have been talking a load of rubbish. I don't really trust him now, because that was such a terrible place. I don't trust people who run terrible places and overcharge. So I regret not going to this other place. The kilometres don't matter, it was just the whole, I felt ripped off essentially. I really didn't enjoy that place. And so in this, you can see as I'm riding along here, it actually doesn't look so bad. The camera does remarkably well. I honestly thought the lens would just be getting besplattered by water the whole time, because the rain was quite consistent. It wasn't super heavy, but it was very consistent. So yeah, I was quite shocked at how the footage doesn't look that bad. But you can kind of see these trees and stuff waving in the wind, so I hope you can imagine how strong the wind is. Yeah, that tree there kind of gives you a good showing of the winds flapping those trees about. Fortunately the wind wasn't a headwind. That would have been just a total horror. It was actually a side wind. The wind was coming in from my right hand side. So I guess it would have been a easterly. Yeah, I think that might have been the turn off to go to the town I could have camped at. There was no point, of course, of going that at this time, because we're back on the road and I just wanted to press on. This section of road had a decent verge on it, as you can see. But the amount of water, as you saw earlier, those trucks throw up is just scary. It is truly quite scary. But I suppose the land could do with a bit of water. It's very yellow or tan coloured grass here. It's very dry. So I know that the farmers are enjoying it. So at least someone gets something good out of this weather. Let's look at the positive. I certainly didn't. I don't mind cycling in the rain. It's not really a big problem. The problem for this one today was the wind, really. The one thing I don't like cycling in is wind. It pushes you about and it's horrible. Also this road, being that horrible State Highway 1, at times gets very narrow and is at those times literally terrifying, especially because it's low light. I have got the lights on my bicycle flashing away, but yeah, these drivers I don't trust them to see me. I don't trust them for anything. I don't trust New Zealand drivers at all, as a general rule. They're aggressive and generally quite horrible to be near. It's an interesting coloured house. Don't know if I'd want that colour on my roof. It's got a sign outside. I guess it's some business run there. All to their own. If you want a mint roof, good for you. So this was quite an open area, as you can tell, so the wind was pretty strong against my side. It was battering me a bit, but as I said, fortunately it's not a headwind. See, the cows agree. Yeah, very heavily clouded day, as you can tell. Can't see the sun, but now we're actually coming to a little cluster of shops. It's more like a services area. So I pulled over here. I know I hadn't been going long. It's only been going for about 25 minutes. All this video today is at twice speed after the introduction, I should say. So yeah, this was about 25 minutes of riding, not the 12 or so minutes of the video. But yeah, I went into the shops there and they had nothing. Well, they had things, but the prices were just phenomenally high. And this is the parking area, which is, as you can see, quite a dreadful shape. I avoided it all and went around the road section. Didn't want to go through all those puddles. This is just essentially a driveway into that services. So now I can get back on the road to Wanganui. Back onto the horrible State Highway 1 in this wet and windy day. So as I mentioned in the introduction, I was thinking of not changing the battery in my camera due to the weather, and I actually decided to stay with that, to stick that idea, because it was just horrible. As we go into a bit of a strange view here. But yeah, I figured also just trying to change the battery, I would be doing it in the rain. I might find shelter, but there's going to be water everywhere. I just think it wasn't worth the risk. I mean, there's a very small chance, I believe, that it would damage the camera, but it's not worth the risk. Especially the footage, as you can see, is not the best. You get the general idea, so I don't think you need to see hours of this sort of just horrible weather. Fortunately, this section of road I won't have to come down again. When I come back from the north, there's actually you can come down the other side. I mentioned, I think it was yesterday's ride, when I got to a junction saying I wanted to turn to the to the left instead of going up the hill past where the bicycles were in that front of that shop. That's the road you come back from the other side of the Northland area. So that's the side I'd be coming back down. I'm going to see if I can not do that at all. I mentioned a while ago when I went to Helensville, there was that charter boat service which would take this whole chunk of State Highway 1 away. I'd basically be able to get back to Helensville without going back to State Highway 1, and it's expensive, but to be honest, I'm quite scared of this State Highway 1. It's that bad. It's a road I just do not want to ever go on again. I know that's maybe you'll think that's a weakness in me. Maybe you think of me as not tough enough, but hey, it's my life and I don't want to lose it to these idiots on the road, on such a terrible road. But as you can see, I've still got a bit of space here. But I do actually get to a section further on, which I did not video. It was before I got to Wanganui, because I'm going to stop filming soon. My camera, beeps, letting me know that it's doing its half-hour restart. For whatever reasons it does that. And I thought, no, I'll just turn it off, because I couldn't see much point in keeping it going. So you see a big machine on the trailer there. I figured there was no real reason to keep videoing this. And it got worse, the road, it just got narrower. There was some roadworks again, and there was just nowhere for me to go. I couldn't go on the opposite side of the wall, because they love those walls. So I actually ended up pushing the bike through that section. I just did not want to ride. It was so scary. The cars were hardly even slowing down. And I just didn't want to be on the road. So I had the bike and kept as close as I could to the wall and just pushed the bike. It was a bit of an uphill, that's why I was pushing it, because as I've said before, when you're going up a hill you tend to wobble a bit, putting weight on the pedals, and it's just terrible. The drivers here just don't care. It almost feels like they don't care if they run you off the road, or don't care if they run into you and kill you. They literally don't care. Yeah, I really do not recommend this section of road. The State Highway 1 north of Auckland, I highly recommend don't go cycling on it. It's just not worth it. It's not fun, and it's definitely not safe. As you see another lorry go past with no caring at all about a cyclist. As I said though, this is a bit wide, so it's not really a big deal. It didn't bother me. But still, there's no harm in slowing down, is there? But now we're going to phase into a next section of road, and this is actually now getting into Wanganui. As I have a lovely big drop of water on my camera lens there. That's great, isn't it? Yeah, as I said, I can't do anything about the water on my lenses when I'm cycling. For one thing, I don't know it's there. But also, if I wipe it, it'll just smear and be worse. But yeah, I don't know if you can see those signs there. They were just saying the change of the speed limit, because we're coming into the town itself. Wanganui is quite a big town. I will be cycling through it after I go to my friends. So this is the town where I'll turn off. I'm actually turning off here. This is to go down to the port area, so it saves me going through the town itself. I came to these sets of lights, and you might see there's a red arrow here. I waited for, you'll see, I actually wait for a few cycles of these red arrows. It just doesn't change. I just get to sit here for a while looking at a red arrow. And so there's no traffic around, so I just had to run the lights, because it's not going to change. Obviously this must have some sort of sensor under the ground, which is how they change these lights. They sense the vehicles, because here we go, it goes green, so no green arrow. Okay, we'll sit here for a bit longer. I kept looking behind me to see if a car would pull up or a truck would pull up, because I figured that will activate the sensor if there is one. But here you see I just go for it. I could wait there forever, I feel. When you see the traffic going back to where you started, you know you've been through a loop and it's not going to change. Yeah, there's a sign saying 3 kilometres to the port, and this saves going through the town. So this is a very industrial area of Wanganui. As this guy pulls up beside me and starts talking to me, I have no idea what he wanted. I don't know, weird drivers in this country. He's just mumbling on about something, I'm not really sure what. I said, okay, okay, and then he just drove away. Weird people in this country. Maybe it'd be nice saying, hey, good to see you. I don't know. He's mumbling, I couldn't really understand him. Anyway, we'll continue on through this industrial area. When I actually got to this section, I was actually a bit concerned because it seemed like I was going back into the countryside. I wasn't 100% sure if this was the right road to go to the across to get to Pedro Bay. I'm going to call it Pedro Bay. I know it's not called that, but I can't remember the name. It's a weird name, so we'll call it Pedro Bay for better or worse. I actually used that name for when I was trying to find it, asking at shops and stuff, and people actually sussed out what I meant, so it seemed to work, so we'll stick with it. But yeah, so this section of road I was a bit worried, am I actually on the right way? And just coming up now, once I turn around, you'll see I'll find a nice little place to pull over that's covered. Now I couldn't look at my map at any stage really, because the map is truly quite pitiful. It's just cheap and nasty. It's sad to see how bad it is. It wasn't that cheap if you ask me. I thought it was well overpriced, and it's just already falling apart just from normal use. So they're not made to last. I've got maps from all over the world, and this is one of the worst ones. But here's this little shelter, so I dried my hands off and such enough to pull out the map and have a look at it at this place and have a little bit of a rest and that sort of stuff. And I realised I was on the right piece of road, so this is continuing on just down the road a bit from that stop. So just here I can see, or you can see a symbol up ahead, and you can see a bridge over to the right, only just. And that's the bridge I have to go across. And essentially you're just staying on the coast. There's the bridge there. And you just keep going around the coast. So we'll cross over to the middle lane here, trying to avoid getting hit by a car. It's always a good idea in my eyes to try to not be hit by the cars. They tend to win those confrontations. I actually saw these shops here and I got a bit confused. I got a bit in my head turned around because this is the bridge here, which I pointed out, and I suddenly thought, is that correct, or am I to go straight here? I'm not too sure. So you see I've swung now back onto this part of the road and not heading to the bridge, and I thought, no, I'm not sure here. I'm going to pull over. You can see shops across the road here, so I thought I'd go into one of them and ask them, if they can tell me which way to go to get to Pedro Bay. This is actually where I called it Pedro Bay, and they knew what I meant, or they figured out what I meant. So they were useful, they helped me out, and now we can see I'm leaving that place and heading back towards the bridge. So from here it's about 25 kilometres to my destination for the day. I decided to stay on the cycle lane walkway bridge thing here, just for safety, and it was quite a nice cycle lane. This whole section pretty much will be done again. Though I don't think I'll come across this bridge again, so I'm glad I got this footage. It's quite an interesting looking bridge. These weird decorations, I guess. So I actually, when we get to the turnoff, I'll show you, but I don't come back this way. I thought I would be, but I think I actually made a bit of a wrong turn on my return trip. It didn't really matter. It was like a 6 of one, half a dozen the other as I go back onto the road. And I chose the other. It worked out fine. But you can see how the visibility is quite poor here. You can see it's hard to see any detail on these, the distant hills and such. It's just all a blur of the rain. The rain had just been consistent all day. The wind was still pretty strong. It had died down a bit. It wasn't as bad here, fortunately, because I ended up starting to head east, which was the way the wind was coming from. And it wasn't as bad. It was still there, but it wasn't unrideable bad. I once cycled across the Nullarbor of Australia, which is a long 1,200 kilometre stretch where it's between the two towns. There's 1,200 kilometres of just desert. Not sandy desert, it's all brush, like small bushes and such. But it's a pretty long way to go with no shops. There's services areas every 200 kilometres or so, or 170 kilometres, these sorts of things. Usually about 2 to 3 days between them. I say 3 days because at times the wind was insane. I was driving to headwinds and I couldn't get to, I was doing less than 10 kilometres an hour. I was doing like 8 k's an hour, and it's just soul destroying when you're going so slow and you have to keep going just because to get to the water. You need water, and I only could carry a finite amount. I'm sure I've mentioned this before, but yeah, this is actually the roundabout where this car just turned off to the left of the shop there. That's where I go on the way back. So the rest of this journey for today, as I said, I haven't got much batteries left by now. It's still over an hour to go. I think it was about an hour and a half I took to get to Pedro Bay from here. It's 25 kilometres. There is some hills there, so that's why it took so long. And it was a weird place to find. I'll mention that on the day I leave, because I do go over a lot of that stuff. I reiterate no doubt what I'm saying now, because of course this voiceover has been recorded later than what I recorded the ride leaving Pedro Bay back to Wanganui and then on north. So this was like a 50k little detour, like 25 kilometres each way. So there's like the marina area over to the right here. Not really a boat person, I've mentioned that before, so didn't really interest me. Hopefully we'll get a better view on the way back. The weather should be better, I hope. On this day I was wearing my wet weather gear, my wet weather trousers and jacket, but it was quite warm still. It was like a muggy day, as we call it, high humidity. Well, naturally it's raining, but it was a hot, it wasn't, well, not hot, it was not cold though. So you do sweat quite a lot. So to be honest, wearing the wet weather trousers I have are actually for motorcycling. So they're actually not that good for cycling, because they hold they don't breathe at all. So I shouldn't have really bothered with them. But the thing is, they dry very easily, so I don't wear any trousers underneath them and just wear them on days like this. But I think I might have been better off just to wear my normal thin cycling trousers that I wear. They're not cycling trousers properly, they're just like hiking trousers. They're quite baggy fit. I like baggy clothes for cycling. I'm not racing, I don't need skin tight. And it just gets a bit more air around you. Here I actually switch over and go across this piece of grass. I was hoping it wasn't too soggy, and it wasn't, because I was getting tired of being on that road with the traffic. So I thought I'd get onto this paved area, this pedestrian area. Not many people out today. As you can imagine, it's a bit wet. So going up this hill where you can see ahead of me, I actually come to this next town. I can't recall its name. And from there you veer off to the left to go around to the bays area. None of them had the sign for where I was going though. It was quite odd. They had one, Wanganui Heads. That was a further on place, so that was actually where I was trying to get to. Well, that's where I was not going that far, but that's the road I had to take. So yeah, so at the turn off, I actually turned off my camera shortly because I'm going up a hill and I'm going to go slow, and I thought, well, I don't want to waste that last little piece of battery. And I wouldn't mind at least getting some footage from when I get down near the coast where the bays area are before I get to Pedro Bay. So we'll fade into that sort of area. And here we are, you can see the water over to now in front of the camera, and out there is the sea. It's hard to see because it's so overcast. But yeah, this is along the coast now. It's reasonably hilly, it's very narrow. It's actually not a nice road, but fortunately there's not a lot of traffic here. It's quite a well-to-do area. It's not poor by any stretch of the imagination. It seems to be wealthy people live down in this region. So they tend to be the people who will run you off the road. Wealthy people don't seem to care about other people. They care about their wealth. So this is going to be the end of this section. I hope you enjoyed the wet ride, and hopefully you'll enjoy the rest of the ride. So we'll skip forward now to and this is the view from the backyard, or the porch, or veranda, sorry, of where I stayed for the 2 days in Pedro Bay, or Parua Bay or something. It's a very, very nice view. That's why I took this shot. So my friend does have a nice place to live. Good for him, eh? Anyway, I hope to see you when we're back on the road. Bye bye.